Welcome back to the channel. This is Trendy Storm and you're watching second and final part of What If Naruto Was Turned Into a Devil by Kyuubi. If you enjoyed this video, please like, share and subscribe to this channel. Now wasting no time, let's start the story.
Before leaving, Naruto made a shadow clone and instructed it to defend the two. Get some rope and tie this idiots up. I need to check on your father. Naruto filled his communicator with chakra and started talking as he leapt over trees on his way to the bridge. Naruto said, "Oi Masaki, are you there?" Masaki answered, "Yeah, I am. Tazuna's daughter almost got herself kidnapped over here." Naruto replied, "I managed to save her though. What about on your end?" Masaki sighed, "Yeah, here too." Zabuza and his lackey showed up. Kakashi Sensei is fighting Zabuza while Sasuke took on the lackey. Naruto was blown out of the trees and onto the ground by an explosion before he could finish his sentence. Good. Make sure it stays that way. I'm on my wall. An anxious Masaki said, "Naruto? What happened?" Naruto remarked, "It appears I was ambushed. I'll be there once I take care of this. Make sure that nobody gets killed before I get there." Wah. Naruto. Masaki cut off his chakra flow to the communicator, so Naruto didn't hear what she said. A figure emerged from the darkness into the open, and he brushed the dust from his face. The figure said, "It has been a while, hasn't it?" Naruto answered, "It's been a while indeed, Maki." Naruto answered, "It's been a while indeed, Maki." Slowly, Naruto turned to confront Maki, who had just emerged from the tree's shadows. Her black hair fell loosely in a ponytail on her back, and it was longer than he remembered. Her curves were accentuated by her sky blue obi, which held her navy blue hakama and kasode together snugly. Ninja sandals adorned her feet, and a katana dangled from her waist. She had a konoha hatai fastened to her left arm. "You seem alive," Maki said, examining Naruto closely with her sharp amber eyes. Naruto started laughing, and she cocked her head slightly. Maki reached for her sword as Naruto stepped forward and remarked, "And you still have your bad sense of humor, I see." He stated, "There's no need for that. I don't mean you any harm." Maki raised an eyebrow and said sarcastically, "And I'm supposed to believe that?" Naruto asked naively, "Why shouldn't you?" Hello? I killed you. Or tried to kill you. That makes you susceptible to wanting revenge. Killed Maki. Naruto yelled, "Oh come on," and enthusiastically waved his arms. "Who do you think I am? Sasuke?" Unaware, Maki asked, "Who's Sasuke?" With a dismissive wave, Naruto said, Never mind." He said, "Anyway, what are you doing here?" "Oh," Maki said casually, "just on official work. Didn't expect to meet one of my missions here though." Condescending Naruto said, "Indeed." He pondered, "So, what are you going to do now?" Maki pulled out her katana and said, How about killing you to remove the only blemish on my record?" Naruto frantically waved his hands, saying, Hey, can't we settle this peacefully?" Maki swung her sword and said, "Nope. Wah, Naruto." Masaki yelled, "Don't you hang up on me, you frigging idiot," as Naruto ended the call. Tazuna became alarmed as she stomped angrily on the ground. Masaki yelled, "I'm going to kill that moron." Masaki's roar caused Kakashi to pause for a moment, but he had to quickly avoid Zabuza's slash. Kakashi skillfully dodged a number of Zabuza's absurdly quick slashes, the majority of which were only a hair's breadth apart. In order to see most of Zabuza's movements, his Sharingan had to spin quickly. Zabuza appeared to have learned a lot from his previous defeat by 3 genin, and he had made sure to improve. However, it was unable to totally subdue the Sharingan because Kakashi kept dodging Zabuza's blows, which only made him more angry. He increased his attack as a result, slashing at Kakashi with all of his strength and speed in an attempt to split him in two. Kakashi was forced to put some distance between them by using a chakra enhanced jump. The two gazed at one another, attempting to decipher and anticipate each other's movements. That lasted only a second before Zabuza plunged his sword into the ground and Kakashi ran through a series of hand signs. They shouted in perfect unison as they formed seals together. Suiden. Suiryuden no Jutsu. Columns of water shot up as the water from beneath the bridge swirled and rose. After coming together at 2 locations behind Zabuza and Kakashi, the water transformed into dragons. Before charging and colliding, the 2 water dragons appeared to briefly assess one another. The 2 jutsu sent torrents of water crashing onto the bridge, flooding the entire platform. The excess water cascaded off the bridge's unfinished end like a waterfall as the water swept over both sides. Zabuza laughed and remarked, "I suppose your reputation isn't unfounded, huh? Copy ninja Kakashi." Kakashi retaliated, "And neither is yours. Zabuza, demon of the bloody mist. Zabuza made a fictitious bow and said, "Why thank you." With gratitude, Zabuza remarked, "But I must say, I'm actually very impressed with your students." Zabuza gestured to Sasuke, who was standing horizontally on a pillar with Haku on the other, and said, "Not only is their teamwork good enough to take me on, their individual skills are pretty close to Haku, at least that Bratz is." They had both leapt there to get away from the raging water. Zabuza stated somberly, however, this is the end for him. At that precise moment, Sasuke and Haku charged at one another. They collided in the center of the bridge. They were both standing there, fighting for control as their weapons clashed. Then, as the water appeared to lose heat, a sudden chill gripped the bridge. All of a sudden, Sasuke and Haku were completely submerged in rising water. After that, the water froze, causing a number of ice slabs to hang around them. Zabuza put one hand to his mouth and the other above him, saying, "Now that Haku has become serious, I can't really slack off, can I? Kirigakure no Jutsu." What's happening? As he was surrounded by numerous ice-made mirrors, Sasuke pondered. He was shocked to see Haku walk straight into one of the mirrors and then appear in all of them. Haku's voice echoed through the dome, "You managed to keep up to me before. Let's see if you can keep up now." Dodging the sword slash aimed at his torso, Naruto took a step back, then he moved inside Maki's guard, ducking down a horizontal slash that was intended to decapitate him. Maki moved her head sideways to avoid the punch he aimed at her head. Maki attempted to kick Naruto in the stomach, but Naruto's momentum caused him to collide with him more. Naruto used his left hand to block the kick before leaping back and separating himself from Maki. "Come on," Naruto moaned, "we don't have to fight." Maki firmly replied, "Yes we do." She slashed down in midair while holding her katana in her right hand. She then charged at Naruto while holding her katana by her side. Naruto leapt backward, but a tree prevented him from doing so. Naruto leapt sideways to avoid Maki's sword's upward slashes. Naruto threw a couple of shurikens at Maki, who skillfully deflected them with her katana, and exclaimed, "Why?" Maki said, "Because I hate you." With a deep sense of hatred, she accelerated toward Naruto, who decided it was wise to draw his kunais and start deflecting Maki's blows. As he dodged another slash, Naruto asked sharply, "Why? What did I ever do to you? What did you do to me?" Maki yelled. Her words were interspersed with slashes from her katana, which Naruto barely avoided. "Because of you, I lost my reputation. Because of you, I don't have a clean record. You are the only failure I ever had. I get laughed at because of you. All. Because you lived." As Maki's speed increased with each slash, Naruto found it increasingly difficult to respond and ultimately fell victim to a surprise kick to the stomach that sent him hurtling into a tree. Gah! Naruto slammed into the tree so hard that he lost his breath. On impact, his back arched before he fell limp to the ground. Before doubling over and coughing up a lot of blood, he was able to pull himself up to a sitting position. Maki approached a crouching Naruto and reprimanded him, Era. Are you done already? And here I thought you were going to put up a better fight this time around. Does she have bipolar disorder?" As Naruto struggled to control his labored breathing, he thought, but when Maki kicked him over, causing him to collapse on his back and gasp for air, he lost it once more. With a finger tracing the edge of her katana, Maki muttered, "I wonder how I should kill you. Maybe I should just behead you." Maki was preoccupied with plotting how to murder Naruto, who appeared to grow pale at the mention of each new method. "Running a sword through you didn't kill you last time." Maki raised her katana above her head and said, "Oh well, doesn't really matter. If you don't die, I'll just kill you again." Totally immobile, Naruto closed his eyes and waited for the impact. However, the attack never materialized despite the passage of several seconds. He opened his eyes slowly and saw Maki with one hand on her ear and her back to him. "Huh," muttered Maki. Maki turned to Naruto and said, "Why? Oh fine. I understand." Her expression was one of extreme displeasure. As she leaned in to put her face near Naruto's, she remarked, "You are one lucky bastard, you know that. You get to live." The two gazed at one another, Maki looking down at Naruto as he looked up from his position. Sparks were flying around them, and one could sense the tension between them. Then, with a sigh, Maki turned around and walked away, breaking the tension. For a few moments, Naruto listened to Maki's departure while staring blankly at the sky. Before long, the sound had stopped. Before vanishing into a cloud of smoke, Naruto remarked, "Time for me to leave as well." Right now, the real Naruto was soaring through the trees with his devil wings spread wide. Desperately, his eyes searched for his target. The magic he used to bolster his vision had made his pupils into slits. He was flying quickly, using his wings to accelerate. However, because magic was also being used on the flapping wings, there was no sound from them. He quickly located his intended victim, who had paused in a clearing. Before making his way on foot toward the clearing and hiding among the bushes, Naruto dove into the underbrush. Maki stood in the clearing, her right hand resting on her hips. She was standing in front of another figure with her back to Naruto. Because Maki was hiding the person from view, Naruto was unable to identify them. To get a better look at the person, Naruto craned his neck, but as soon as Maki turned her head, he squatted down. Maki turned to face the person in front of her after giving Naruto's location a suspicious glance. "Why did you call me back, Madoka-san?" Maki asked, sounding irritated. Maki moved slightly to the left, revealing the stunning figure of Kurokami Madoka, and said, "I could have killed him off." Boink. Madoka gave Maki a quick tap on the head. Maki lowered her head in shame as Madoka reprimanded her, saying, "And how many times do I have to remind you that you shouldn't go about killing comrades?" "Ooh." Maki sulked, "But you know why I want to kill him." Madoka lectured, "That doesn't mean you can actually kill him. Show some moderation." "Ooh. Yes." Maki gave a nod. Sensing that Maki was uncomfortable, Madoka changed the subject and asked, "Anyway, did you do your job?" Maki instantly brightened and replied, "Yes." Maki struck a cute pose and made a victory sign with her hand, saying, "I stopped the bandits from attacking the village." As Madoka perspired at Maki's antiques, Naruto reflected, she really is bipolar. Maki seemed to melt when Madoka patted her on the head, praising her and saying, "Good. That means they won't be a problem anymore." "You fun." Maki nuzzled her head into Madoka's hand with a joyful smile. Maki started crying as Madoka pulled her hand away and said, "All right. Time for you to go and accomplish your real mission." Maki became joyful once more as a result. She said with a smile, "Yes." She gave Madoka a small bow before bolting. Madoka looked around and saw Maki fleeing. Then she turned her head slightly in Naruto's direction, and he tensed. "Why don't you come out of your hiding place, Naruto-kun?" Madoka replied. Slowly, Naruto emerged from his hiding spot and entered the open. Dusting off the leaves that had adhered to him, he asked, "How long have you known?" Madoka turned to Naruto and said, "From the very beginning. I noticed you the moment Maki turned around suspiciously." Naruto clicked his tongue in frustration and said, "TCH. And here I thought I had managed to hide myself well." Madoka complimented Naruto, saying, "Oh, you did. It's just that my sensory capabilities are better than your average ninja." "Whatever." Naruto dismissed Madoka with a wave. "Anyway, I didn't know you were a Junin." Madoka laughed a little and remarked, "There are lots of things that you don't know about me. So, what are you going to do now?" Naruto turned to go, saying, I think I'll go back to my team now." He turned his head around after taking a few steps. Naruto then spread his devil wings and took off, saying, "You should keep a tighter leash on your servant. Someone might just accidentally kill her." With a slightly crooked smile, Madoka muttered, "So, you figured it out." Madoka suddenly started laughing as devil wings appeared on her back. "Interesting. Very interesting. I wonder what else are you going to show to me, Naruto-kun?" "Kukuku. Kahahahaha," she exclaimed. In an attempt to make up for lost time, Naruto flew quickly through the forest in the direction of the bridge. After transferring some chakra into his communicator, he began speaking. Naruto said, "Oi, Masaki. Are you there?" Then a shouting voice from the opposite side caused his head to snap to one side. Masaki yelled, "Naruto, you motherfucking bastard," over the communicator. "How dare you cut off the communicator?" Naruto attempted to calm Masaki down by saying, "Calm down, Masaki. It couldn't be helped, you know." "Calm down. Didn't do much good. How can I calm down when you first tell me that you were being ambushed and then cut off the communicator?" Naruto questioned, "Because I never was ambushed in the first place?" "Hey, what do you mean by that?" inquired a perplexed Masaki. Naruto exhaled a sigh of relief and said, "I meant exactly what I said. I had noticed the ambush long before I reached it. So I had switched with a clone and gave it the communicator. Then I made the clone do the talking. That's why I said not to worry." Masaki, who was now a little ashamed of her earlier outburst, muttered, "Is that so?" She tried to get over her embarrassment by asking, "If that is the case, how are you talking to me now?" Naruto answered, "I am using the spare communicator. Why, didn't you notice?" When Masaki finally noticed that Naruto was using a spare communicator, she remained silent. Naruto inquired, "Anyway, how's the situation there?" "Ah," said Masaki, "well, I suppose you could say that it's fine. or you could say that it isn't fine. Naruto questioned in confusion, what's that supposed to mean? With a pause, Masaki said, well, everyone is still alive, so you say that everything is fine. But, inquired Naruto inquisitively. How can I say this? Sasuke is currently inside a dome made of ice with the 100 nin, whereas Zabuza used his mist technique, so I can't really see anything clearly. Masaki murmured. Wondering, who? Is that so? Naruto asked. I'll be there soon, so why don't you get Sasuke out of that ice cube? Or dome? Or whatever. Masaki questioned, and how am I supposed to do that? Masaki recoiled when Naruto reprimanded him. Are you an idiot? The area is covered in mist, isn't it? That means there is no sun. Add 2 and 2, will you? Masaki realized and said, you want me to do that? Yep. There's no need to hold back. Give them hell, replied Naruto. Right. Kakashi waited for Zabuza to strike again while standing in the middle of the fog. He had never once been able to locate Zabuza because of the near zero visibility. He was therefore forced to detect Zabuza's attacks and just avoid them. Zabuza said, you know Kakashi, and the whole room echoed. I didn't expect you to only dodge my attacks. I was expecting you to be more aggressive, you know what I mean. If this continues on, I might decide that your silly little genins have surpassed you. Kakashi muttered angrily, your ventriloquism is really getting on my nerve, you know that Zabuza. But still, I might agree on the fact that my genins have the potential to surpass me. But they still have a long ways to go. Zabuza muttered, I didn't really mean it as a compliment, ya know. Then, with his sword already in mid-swing, he silently and quickly materialized behind Kakashi. Kakashi leapt over the horizontal slash as soon as he realized. He had to dodge a vertical slash in midair the next second. But as soon as he landed on his feet, he realized that he hadn't dodged it perfectly because blood was streaming from a cut on his left shoulder. Gah! He exclaimed in agony as Zabuza swung around with his sword as a pivot and kicked Kakashi in the middle, sending him flying. Kakashi skidded to a stop after flying a few good meters. Using his right hand to stop the blood flow from his injured shoulder, he slowly got himself up. Zabuza, irritated by Kakashi's apparent lack of talent, remarked, this is beginning to become boring. If you don't take this seriously, you are soon going to get killed. Kakashi reached into his weapons pouch and took out a scroll. As he opened the scroll and smeared some of his blood on it, Kakashi remarked, you are right in that aspect, I guess. I should live up to my reputation, or I might become late Kakashi permanently. Sasuke was in a difficult situation. No, a pinch would be an understatement of his situation. He was in serious trouble. He had initially been able to match the 100 nin blow for blow, as their speeds were comparable. However, the battle became one-sided as soon as the 100 nin entered his ice mirrors. He was struggling to keep up with the 100 nin because of how quickly he was moving through the mirrors. Furthermore, those senbon needles, which appeared to be the 100 nin's preferred weapon, were incredibly annoying. You would think that Zabuza's apprentice would at least manage that much, but for some strange reason, he had not yet been hit on any vitals. His movements were being impeded by this, which had transformed him into a human porcupine. But he was growing accustomed to the speed. He was extremely frustrated that his body was unable to keep up with the speed, which was the only reason he continued to be struck. This hindered his ability to devise a strategy, which is why Sasuke had not yet developed a plan of action. The hunter nin's voice reverberated through the dome, oh. You have a good expression there. Did you come up with a plan? With his trademark smug grin on his lips, Sasuke answered, maybe. He then went through a number of hand signals before exhaling a massive fireball. I wonder if you have an answer for this. Kaden Gokyaku no Jutsu. His vision was obscured by the thick smoke that was produced when the fireball struck the ice head directly. The smoke dissipated to reveal an ice dome that was entirely intact. The hunter nin, unable to comprehend Sasuke's actions, tilted his head to one side and asked, and that was supposed to do what? Sasuke said, it served its purpose. His smugness was fully exposed as his smile grew bigger with every second that went by. Then he did something wholly uncharacteristic. He gave his nose a rub. Nihi. Goodbye. He then vanished in a cloud of smoke. Hunter Nin was unable to finish his sentence before numerous enormous balls of fire struck the dome from the exterior, shattering the mirrors that supported it. What the? He thought. The dome exploded as more and more fireballs attacked it. Before putting his bloodied right hand on the scroll, Kakashi performed a number of hand signals. Kuchios no Jutsu. 7 nin dogs materialized in front of Kakashi with a puff of smoke. Impressed, Zabuza remarked, oh, a summoning, huh? Though no one saw, he shook his head and said, but still, Unless you have something that can find me in this mist, it's useless. Then it's a good thing that they can find you, right? Replied Kakashi. Zabuza was unable to finish his sentence because of a sharp pain in his legs. Huh. Ouch. A dog was biting into his calf when he looked down. 6 additional dogs then arrived and proceeded to bite into any available area of Zabuza, thereby securing him. Dogs? But how did they find me? Zabuza questioned dismissively. Kakashi answered, the blood on your sword. Zabuza glanced down at his sword and saw that Kakashi's blood was all over its tip. But even if I said I would live up to my reputation, I am not going to use any of my copied moves. Rather, I am going to use my original move against you. Be proud, Zabuza. Not many can force me to use this move. You just placed yourself into a very small list. What is he discussing? As he stared into the fog, utterly immobile, Zabuza thought. He recalled Kakashi's initial move at that precise moment, and he saw a bright blue light appear in front of him, followed by a loud chorus of birds chirping. He started to ask, is he going to use? But was interrupted by an explosion that happened close to the bridge's center. A powerful shock wave ensued, nearly knocking Zabuza off his feet and momentarily releasing a couple of the nin dogs. The shock wave blew the mist cover away, exposing the whole bridge. As soon as Zabuza realized the explosion was coming from the ice dome, he yelled, Haku. Soon after, he saw Haku, who had been knocked unconscious by the explosion's force and was now on the ground. Smoke was escaping from his body. Glancing around, Zabuza saw that Tazuna was shielded from the shockwave by the 2 members of Kakashi's team standing in front of him. An unidentified voice said, well, this is quite surprising, right? Everyone turned to see a burly man in a suit holding a walking stick at the source of the voice. Tazuna said, Gatu? Gatu exclaimed with joy, ah, Tazuna, you seem to be still alive. With an evil sneer on his lips, he said, that means Zabuza and his lackey failed. That takes a load off my chest, you know. Now I don't have to worry about paying him. Zabuza roared, what is the meaning of this? Gatu said, Era. It's obvious, you know. Gatu gestured to the unfinished end of the bridge and said, I'm not going to pay you. In fact, I am going to have you killed. Do you know how much bounty is on your head? That's why I brought an army, you know. As everyone looked around, they saw that at least 100 bandits had gathered at the end. Kakashi cancelled his technique, thinking, this just got worse. Gatu saw Haku on the ground and exclaimed, hey, what's this? Visibly disappointed, Gatu approached Haku's unconscious body and started prodding him with his stick, asking, isn't it Zabuza's lackey? Why is he on the ground? Did he die? He's just unconscious. Then Gatu turned to Zabuza. Then he pressed a switch on his stick, causing a hidden blade to emerge from its tip. But that's still fine. I can now do what I always wanted to do. Then he drove the stick straight into Haku's abdomen. Before crudely removing the stick, Gatu stirred it into Haku's stomach and said, I always wanted to kill this bitch. Then he stabbed once more, this time directly into Haku's neck. Your lackey was very annoying, you know that, Zabuza. Gatu said, drawing the stick out and then drawing the blade back in. Someone would have killed her. Gatu coughed up a lot of blood, but he was unable to finish his sentence. A sharp, numbing pain shot through his chest. He noticed a child with blonde hair staring up at him with emotionless, icy blue eyes. For a brief instant, Gatu's eyes appeared to show him burning in the depths of hell. Another sharp pain, this time in his stomach, jolted him out of his delusions. When he looked down, he saw a katana sticking into his stomach from the back and a kunai sticking into his chest from the front. Gatu fell sideways to the ground as the katana and kunai were simultaneously drawn out. What in the hell? With a katana impaling him from behind and a kunai impaling him from the front, Gatu stood there still. Nobody moved or spoke for a few moments. Gazing slowly down, Gatu saw a child with blonde hair holding a kunai buried deep in his solar plexus. Gatu shuddered at the emotionless, icy expression on the boy's face. Gatu's body spasmed as the blonde boy twisted the kunai and then crudely pulled it out. As though from a geyser, blood spurted from the open wound. Then, as the katana that had impaled him from behind was drawn just as roughly, if not more so, than the kunai, Gatu went through another episode of spasms. Gatu became weak and fell to his knees as soon as the katana was drawn. Then he collapsed into his own blood, face down. Am I really dying? Was Gatu's final thought as he lay on the pool of blood, bleeding out and losing vision. As Gatu passed away, the bridge fell silent. Nobody could truly understand what had just happened. It was efficient as well as fast. Only because there were 2 people carrying out the kill did it take an overall time of 3 seconds. Gadu had died seconds after the kill and had not been able to produce a single sound. The blonde boy approached the deceased crime lord and stood next to his body. He cast a contemptuous glance at the lifeless body. Before returning his bloodied kunai to its kunai holster, he leaned over and wiped it on Gadu's shirt. When he looked up, he saw a girl his age using a piece of cloth to wipe a katana under a shadow. The boy got up, turned to the girl, and started talking. With a hint of disdain, the blonde said, "You shouldn't have interfered, Maki. I could have handled this one by myself." As Maki sheathed her katana, she asked incredulously, "And how were you going to do that, Naruto?" Maki pointed to Haku's lifeless body, which was just a few feet from them, and said, "You didn't even get here in time to save the poor girl. And whose fault do you think that is?" Naruto was fuming. "If you hadn't stopped me on my way here, I could have gotten here ages ago." Maki whipped her head to the side in a proud gesture and answered, as if, "You didn't even get here before me." Maki's arrogant display obviously infuriated Naruto, who responded, "Again, it was your fault that I was late. If you can't even get over such a small setback, you can never hope to surpass me," said Maki. Naruto roared, "A small setback, you almost killed me back there." Maki remarked, "Like I said, small setback." In shock, Naruto sputtered, "You, what, Oj?" When Sasuke approached the two arguing ninjas to try to calm them down, he interrupted their conversation, asking, "Is this really the time to be having a lover's quarrel?" Pointing to the hundreds of bandits Gadu had brought along, he said, "We have a situation on our hand, you know." None of them were overly happy about their boss's unexpected death. One of the bandits yelled, "The brat's right. You killed our boss, ya no." Others yelled, "That's right. Who's going to pay us now, huh?" A bandit said, "I propose that we murder them all and then divide the reward on their heads." Together, the bandits roared, "Yeah. Let's kill them all." Naruto whispered, "It really is a situation, isn't it?" He moved between his teammates and the bandits by stepping over Gadu's corpse. He cracked his knuckles and said, "We better clean this mess up. Don't you agree, Maki?" Maki took her katana out of its sheath again and said, "I suppose we really should." She then assumed a low single-handed stance and pointed the blade's tip downward. Poising himself like a tiger on a hunt, or more accurately, like a fox on a hunt, Naruto knelt on all four limbs. Then he spoke while turning to face Kakashi. With an overwhelming tone that made it nearly impossible to resist, Naruto said, "Don't tell anyone what's going to happen next. No one, do you understand?" Kakashi, however, wasn't a Junin for show. He shrugged off the pressure with a nonchalant jerk of his head and spoke. "I'll still have to report to Hokage. Dono, you know." Every muscle in Naruto's body stiffened for the blow as he paused in his crouch. After giving it some thought, he nodded. He turned to face the bandits, who had taken the time to simply stand there and create a commotion, and remarked, "Only Hokage. GG then." The bandits were silenced by Naruto's low, rumbling growl, which gradually increased to a thundering roar. Chakra started to pour out of Naruto at a startling rate, covering him like a cloak. The blue chakra soon started to shift, veering slowly in the direction of red. Naruto was completely engulfed by the red chakra, which appeared to be boiling. It took the form of a fox and made Naruto look like one. A tail was created by the excess chakra coming together. Naruto's birthmarks on his cheeks grew longer, and his pupils turned into slits. The chakra stopped leaking as abruptly as it had started, leaving Naruto in the form. "Is that Naruto?" Astonished by the change, Sasuke pondered. However, it was far from over yet. Naruto stretched his limbs, a rash smile spreading across his face. Then he started to release a lot of black energy, the kind that had never been seen before. It felt as though one could touch it if they so desired, and it had nothing in common with chakra. Naruto's cloak gradually grew darker until it was completely black. The cloak vanished with a flash of light, revealing a normal and somewhat agitated Naruto. What just happened?" inquired Sasuke, who was obviously confused. Kakashi said, "I think he just messed it up." Maki exclaimed, "PFF'd. Ha ha ha," in response to Naruto's misfire of whatever he had tried. One of the bandits yelled, "We can't let the brat do whatever it was that he tried to do." Another yelled, "Yeah. Attack." All of the bandits responded to the call by charging at the ninja group. Naruto leapt up in a panic, saying, "Shit," he said, searching in vain for something in his backpack. "Misaki, cover me." He turned around when he received no response and saw a visibly irate Misaki. With a vein throbbing on her forehead, Misaki remarked, "Oh, so now you remember me. Come on, Misaki. This is no time to be angry." Naruto begged, "You can be angry at me as much as you like later on." "Really?" Misaki asked. Naruto replied, yes, really? Masaki said, good. She moved in front of Naruto and made a number of hand gestures. She exuded a great deal of chakra, which spilled into the sea and down the sides of the bridge. A wall of water formed between the shinobi and the bandits as pillars of water emerged from the sea and then converged. I can only hold this for a minute, so get your ass moving and do what you need to, Masaki yelled. After removing a tiny pouch from his backpack, Naruto took out a red pill. He squatted on all fours and swallowed the pill after putting it in his mouth. Then, just as before, a lot of chakra poured out of him, changing color from blue to red much more quickly. The water wall broke as the chakra started to envelop Naruto. Masaki, who was obviously exhausted from using so much chakra, collapsed to her knees. Breathing heavily, she glanced in Naruto's direction, praying that the time she gave would be sufficient. And it was, as she saw Naruto fully cloaked in the red chakra. This is interesting, thought Maki, as she prepared to charge into the bandits. I pondered what the fool would do with so much chakra. I hope he doesn't obstruct me. Maki quickly learned about it when Naruto's chakra cloak sent two enormous appendages that resembled arms flying in the direction of the bandits. Before tossing the bandits over the side of the bridges, the chakra hands caught as many of them as possible. Naruto launched himself directly into the center of the bandits after flinging over a significant portion of the frontal attack. Now, the chakra had grown into two tails that whipped out at random intervals at gullible people, who were mercilessly carried away. Maki charged straight into the now dwindling front line, determined not to be outdone. Few were able to keep up with Maki's quick and light movements or her accurate and quick sword strikes, which effortlessly cut off heads, torsos, and legs. Finding the pieces of sliced bandits that followed her was the only way to follow her. At that moment, a massive water dragon materialized out of the water and crashed down on most of the remaining bandits, instantly eliminating them. Both Maki and Naruto stopped when they noticed Zabuza releasing enough stifling pressure to be true to his demon moniker. He was now more menacing than ever, having finally woken from the days of watching Haku die in front of him. It goes without saying that the few remaining bandits chose to try their luck at sea, jumping into the water despite the fact that the majority of them were incapable of swimming. Zabuza was about to follow them when a massive red chakra wall stopped him. He looked at Naruto, who had suddenly materialized directly behind him. Naruto was cautioned, don't do something rash here, Zabuza. His cloak started to fade around him, leaving only his left arm that extended into the wall. Zabuza glared at Naruto and said, stop blocking my way, brat. You won't live to regret it. Naruto started, while I understand your impulse to have revenge, but was cut off by a furious Zabuza. Zabuza bellowed, you don't understand me. Did you even have to watch? Zabuza ended up being interrupted this time. Naruto yelled, shut your trap, you stupid man. You should mourn only when all hopes of saving your partner has disappeared. Unable to believe what he was hearing, Zabuza said, wah, do you mean she's still alive? Technically, she's dead. Naruto raised a finger to silence Zabuza, but there's still a chance to save her. How much longer would it take her to wake up? She should wake up soon. As the darkness that was engulfing her gradually started to fade, Haku heard voices in the distance. At first, she was confused and couldn't recall her location or her activities. All that was left in her mind was a drab fog. However, it quickly subsided as she gradually regained consciousness and bodily control. She forced herself to open her eyes, but the light blinded her. Trying to get her bearings, she squinted her eyes when she saw a blond boy examining her face intently. Haku tried to roll away from the boy, whom she had not yet recognized, with a speed that even startled her. However, the boy responded more quickly, snatching her hand and yanking her back into the bed. The boy said, you shouldn't be moving yet. Haku's vision returned sufficiently to identify him as Naruto. Someone called behind Naruto, Haku. Haku's eyes refocused, and she finally noticed a very familiar person standing right behind Naruto. Zabuza. Sama, she exclaimed, jumping into Zabuza's hands, who was, for the first time, crying. Zabuza hugged Haku and said, I'm so glad. I thought that I almost lost you. With tears in her eyes, Haku said, I'm sorry to have worried you. While I would normally gladly let you continue this reunion, Naruto suddenly said, I still need to run a few checkups on her. Zabuza curtly said, fine, and released Haku, do your checkup quickly. Zabuza stepped aside to make room for Naruto, who promptly started to extend Haku's arms and legs. Naruto said, the arms are all right. He turned Haku's head around and said, so are the legs. Neck's fine too. Then his hands went down, and then squish. He touched her. Haku and Zabuza both froze in place, as if time had stopped inside the room. Naruto kept stroking Haku's breasts in admiration. He grinned and remarked, "Well, the breasts seem to be alright, too." A fierce flush of blood swiftly rose to Haku's cheek. She let out a cute scream, "Kaya!" and then punched Naruto in the face, sending him flying through the open door. Haku yelled, "You filthy, perverted bastard," and charged after him. Surprisingly, Zabuza had shut the door behind him and blocked her. Zabuza bitterly remarked, "While I want to kill the brat as much as you do, you kind of owe your life to him." Dusting off his clothes, Naruto hauled himself off the ground. Before descending the stairs, he whispered to himself, "And strength is back to normal too." Naruto heard someone ask, "Is she up yet?" and looked up to see Sasuke waiting for him at the bottom of the stairs. As he entered the dining room, Naruto said, "Yup." As he glanced around, he noticed Misaki seated at the table with Tazuna, who was, for once, not drinking. Tsunami, Tazuna's daughter, was in the kitchen right now, and there was a wonderful aroma emanating from it. When Naruto noticed the Junin's presence, or rather, its absence, he inquired, "Where's Kakashi, sensei?" Misaki stood up from the table and said, "He said something about sending a report." Before leaving the house together, the three genin came together. They encountered Kakashi at the door, who had just returned from his errand. He asked them, "Where are you lot going?" "Just for a walk," Naruto answered. As he pulled out his book, Kakashi said, "Don't be too long. The mission isn't over yet." Naruto nodded and said, "Sure, Kakashi, sensei." After a short while of walking, the three of them stopped inside a tiny clearing in the forest that surrounded the house. "So," Sasuke said, "are you going to tell us about that Maki chick?" Naruto felt the intense glare that Misaki was giving him, and he looked nervously at Sasuke for bringing up the subject right away. Naruto whispered to himself, "You had to bring that up, didn't you?" Misaki posed a perilous question, "What did you say?" With agitation, Naruto answered, "Nothing, nothing." Misaki was unconvinced. "Right." She started tapping her right foot while crossing her arms. "Come on. What are you waiting for?" Naruto then went on to describe his history with Maki, including how he first met her, how she killed her, and their later reunion in the forest earlier that day. Although he occasionally omitted information, he provided his teammates with a thorough explanation. "So, you are telling me that this Maki girl asked you out on a date, and then killed you?" Sasuke was skeptical. Naruto nodded gravely, "Yup." With a broad smile on his face, Sasuke mocked Naruto, saying, "That is just pathetic." "Hey, just so you know, I didn't actually die. I was reborn into the powerful devil that you see today," Naruto replied. Sasuke triumphantly retorted, "But it's still pathetic." "Goo!" moaned Naruto, who had provided Sasuke with the ideal fodder for his caustic remarks. Zabuza concluded, "And that's the story. So you were telling me that I died, then that perverted ninja did something to my body, and I came back to life?" Haku was incredulous. "And now I am somehow bound to do what he bids me to do?" Zabuza concurred, saying, "Well, that's one way of summing it up." "You know Zabuza. Sama, I respect you, but I never expected you to believe such cock and bull story." Haku chided Zabuza. Zabuza attempted to defend himself by saying, "But you really did die." Haku said sourly, "That still doesn't mean that I am somehow bound to him." Zabuza stumbled, but. Haku lifted a finger and said, "No buts. I didn't expect Zabuza Sama to do something so silly. I am going to ask him again." Haku murmured. A chill went up Zabuza's spine as Haku started muttering a number of violent ways to force Naruto to tell the truth. Later, when Haku and Zabuza descended to the dining room, they discovered Kakashi reading a book while leaning against a wall. Zabuza recognized the young woman in the kitchen as the daughter of the bridge builder. Tazuna, the aforementioned bridge builder, had tensed up when he saw Zabuza, the memories of their earlier meetings still fresh in his mind. After looking around the room for the genins, Zabuza asked Kakashi what they were. "Where's the blonde brat?" But before Kakashi could respond, the door opened and the three genin entered. Zabuza said, "Ah, brat. Good timing, we need to talk." Naruto appeared perplexed. "Huh? About what?" Haku started to say, "It's about my servitu," but she was unable to finish because Naruto reached her with an uncommon burst of speed and covered her mouth with his hand. With a nervous laugh, Naruto said, "Why don't we go outside and talk?" and hurried outside, dragging Haku along. Kakashi broke the awkward silence that ensued. "That was weird." Haku angrily questioned, "Why did you drag me out like that?" Naruto, breathing heavily, replied, "They don't know about the situation yet, and I plan on keeping it that way for a while." Haku asked, perplexed, "Why is that?" It's rather complicated, and I want to explain things in the right order, responded Naruto. All right. Then tell me why I should obey your commands, Haku inquired, her annoyance and rage returning. About that. It's not like you have to listen to them. More like you should listen as long as they are reasonable. Naruto was trying to clarify. Haku was unable to comprehend Naruto's logic and asked, even if they are reasonable, why should I follow them? Well, it directly relates to the method I used to revive you, Naruto said. At this point, Naruto's voice became incomprehensible. You see, you were dead. There's no doubt about it. It was not possible to bring you back to life through any normal methods. So what I did was. As her temper flared, Haku questioned, what exactly did you do? With trepidation, Naruto answered, I kinda turned you into a devil. Haku questioned menacingly, what do you mean turn me into a devil? You know, those things that show up in stories and legends, like demons, but not exactly the same, replied Naruto. Unconvinced by Naruto's weak defense, Haku turned to walk away, saying, again with your stories. If can't come up with a good enough explanation, at least don't lie. A voice echoed through the room, I wouldn't do that if I were you. A figure emerged from the tree's shadows. Maki, cried Naruto. What are you doing here? I'm here to pass on a message, but seeing you can't even explain things to your new recruit properly, I decided that I should step in before this little girl here ends up dead again. Maki responded. Haku yelled, hey, who are you calling a little girl? Before turning to face Naruto, Maki yelled at Haku, oh shut up. I'm doing you a favor. The best way to talk about devils is to give a demonstration. In an instant, Maki's katana moved to her hand as she charged Naruto with incredible speed. Naruto leapt into the air as she cut at him. Then, with no way to avoid it, she proceeded to stab Naruto while he was in the air. When Haku opened her eyes after instinctively closing them and hearing no sound of flesh being impaled by a sword, she was taken aback by what she saw. Right now, Naruto was hovering a few meters above the ground. He was able to fly out of the sword's path because of the black bat, like wings that protruded from his back. Naruto stated solemnly, that wasn't a very nice thing to do. Maki answered gravely, and I'm not trying to be nice to you. Naruto clicked his tongue angrily and said, TCH, what are you here for anyway? I came here to confirm that she is going to join your group or not, replied Maki. Naruto questioned, and if she's not, well, you already know what's going to happen, don't you? Maki answered, a bloodthirsty grin and a crazed expression coming to her face. And I'm going to take extreme pleasure in exacting the punishment. A tense atmosphere developed between the two, and Haku started to recall once more the strength of Naruto's abilities that she had previously witnessed, and if someone was on an equal footing. No, being in a better position than him made them feel afraid. As you can see, I'm still in the middle of explaining things to her, said Naruto. And the only way you can go after her is if I declare her as a stray. If I don't, well, let's just say that your master won't be very pleased to pay for damages caused by your willfulness. Maki pouted, ah, you're such a party pooper. She twisted her head toward Naruto after turning around to go. She vanished into the woods after saying, but if you ever need a stray to kill, all you have to do is just ask. For a while, Naruto gazed in Maki's direction before lowering himself slowly to the ground, folding his wings, and turning to face Haku. So, where were we? Masaki waited for something while leaning against a tree. Naruto and Haku had been gone for a long time. Having sensed something in the area, Masaki had departed right after them. She felt it fly by her, so she didn't have to wait long. She released all of her restraints and called forth multiple magic circles, which proceeded to unleash a barrage of additional magic attacks that converged in a single location and detonated without any grace. A voice from behind Masaki said, that's not a very nice greeting, is it? Masaki whirled around and was punched in the stomach, sending her flying. The voice's owner emerged from the shadows and identified herself as Maki, saying, let me return the favor. After pulling herself up off the ground, Masaki faced Maki directly. Maki mockingly said, so, will you tell me the reason for such a warm welcome? Or do I have to beat it out of you? Seething with rage, Masaki questioned, why did you come back into Naruto's life? Maki whispered to herself, I see. Straight to the point. Then she smiled and spoke aloud. What makes you think that I came back into his life willing? There's no way a bitch like you wouldn't want to get into his life, now that he's strong, Masaki barked. Even a novice could see that Maki's smile was phony because of the strong negative energy radiating from her. Maki pretended to ignore the insult as she muttered, jealous, I see. Didn't think I'll see someone jealous for him. Anyway, I didn't know that that stupid idiot was going to be here as well. And, No, I don't think that he's strong either. Roaring, then you're wrong. Maki prodded Masaki, saying, oh, and what will you do? Prove to me by defeating me. You're just his lackey. At this point, Masaki became irate and said, why you? She called forth hundreds of magic circles, all encircling Maki as her wings spread wide. After that, she launched a barrage of magical blows that attacked Maki from every angle. This time, the explosion was even more powerful, and a mushroom cloud of smoke and debris exploded upward. Masaki had thrown all her energy into a single attack and was panting heavily. However, when the smoke started to clear, she was unable to locate Maki. A twig suddenly snapped behind her. But before she could turn around, a hand swung out and sliced her neck, knocking her out cold. Too easy. Right, so as just demonstrated, you are now a devil, replied Naruto. After a period of silence, Haku finally spoke. So, I have wings. With a heavy nod, Naruto answered, yup, and special powers too. Like what? Asked Haku, starting to feel curious. Well, for one thing, you'll live for a very long time. Naruto said, enjoying Haku's surprised expression. Haku's eyes grew even wider at this. You'll have improved endurance, for one thing. You'll also have greater speed than before. Haku became a little dejected and said, although there will be some negatives too. Haku was obviously depressed when he said, you'll be extremely adverse to sunlight, for one thing. In fact, if you're not too careful, it might even kill you. But no need to worry. A simple spell can fix that. After considering everything, Haku clapped her hand as though she had remembered something. You still haven't told me why I have to serve you. Well, Naruto appeared to consider what he was saying. I'm going to tell you the truth. You don't have to follow my orders. But if you don't, I can declare you a stray devil. And Haku pushed Naruto to go on. Naruto said, other devils will hunt you down. Haku started to say, now wait just a minute, but Naruto spoke before her. You don't have to worry about that. All you need to do is be my knight. Haku questioned, aren't you messing up the order? No. I didn't mean it like a princess and knight thing. I meant that I'll be the king while you'll be the knight. Naruto clarified. Haku was irritated and said, that still doesn't explain it. I managed to get a high rank in the Devil's Echelon after a hellish training and several ridiculous battles. Which in turn allowed me to revive humans and make them my, should I say, employee. They work for me, and they get paid. Once they become strong enough themselves, they can get a higher rank, and later employ others too. Naruto continued. Haku said, so I'll get paid. Yup. Naruto said, pleased that the point had been understood. And I don't necessarily have to follow your orders? Naruto gave a nod. Haku realized, but I have to leave Zabuza-sama. Naruto said, I'm afraid so, but you don't have to worry about him. An acquaintance of mine will take him in, give him jobs so that he can finally realize his dream of freeing the land of water. So, do we have a deal? Haku thought about everything that had been told to her. She came to a painful but necessary conclusion. Haku nodded and said, as long as I can still help Zabuza-sama, I won't do anything for you otherwise. Deal. Masaki gradually regained consciousness. A rustling sound warned her that there was a figure behind her as she slowly dragged herself to a sitting position. Without even looking back, she addressed the figure. Did you get enough information, Sasuke? Sasuke answered, his Sharingan blazing, plenty. And that's the story. In Konoha, the day was pleasant. People were enjoying the sunshine as they made their way to work as the sun shone brightly upon them. A large building with the word Hokage in large kanji was passed by a few of them. Along the inner wall of the building was a spiral staircase that led upward. The inner walls had room doors, and the outer wall was punctuated at regular intervals by a number of windows. One of these doors led to the Hokage's office. From this office, which had a view of the entire village, the village chief would govern the community, and there was a meeting going on inside this office. Just now, a group of ninja had returned from a mission and were reporting back to the Hokage on what they had discovered. Seated at his desk, the Hokage observed his 4 ninja, who appeared to have returned with a guest. Having just described what had transpired in the land known as Wave, the eldest ninja, Hitaki Kakashi, who also held the highest rank, being a Junin and all, stood on the opposite side of the desk. Behind Kakashi were his subordinates, rather, his students, his 3 genins. Standing farthest away from the desk, leaning against the wall next to the room's door, was Uchiha Sasuke, one of the survivors of the notorious Uchiha clan massacre. On the other hand, Uzumaki Naruto, the blonde, energetic boy, known almost universally as the most notorious prankster to be ever born. was standing the closest, right behind Kakashi. Standing directly next to Naruto was Uchiha Masaki, the other Uchiha member of the team and the only other Uchiha remaining in the village, aside from Sasuke. "So, did you really kill Gato?" the Sandaime Hokage asked Naruto. Naruto nodded. "I did. There was no other way that the bridge could have been completed." Sarutobi turned to face the others after appearing to be deep in contemplation. "The fact that you guys managed to hold your ground against someone of Zabuza's caliber is praiseworthy, but you really shouldn't act rashly against such opponents," Sarutobi warned the three genins. "Such actions are foolhardy, and could lead to your death." Masaki questioned, "But we didn't die, so it should be fine, right?" "Just because it didn't happen this time, doesn't mean that it won't happen again," Sarutobi replied. "So I must ask you to be more careful in the future. Do you understand?" Together, the three genin said, "Yes, Hokage, Sama." Sarutobi went on, "Now, what was it about bringing Zabuza's accomplice with you?" he asked, staring at Haku, or, more accurately, at what was visible of her from Masaki's back. "About that." Naruto stepped forward, and Kakashi shifted to the side. "Haku-chan here doesn't want to live a life on the run anymore, so she decided to come with us and settle here in Konoha." Sarutobi thought, and yet she was the accomplice of a missing nin. No one knew about her before. Naruto countered, and no one put up a bounty on her head, either. Her name does not appear in the bingo book. Hell, I doubt that she's even registered as a ninja anywhere. Sarutobi told Naruto, "But we can't just accept her, we don't know anything about her past." With determination, Naruto answered, "Then I'll vouch for her. That ought to do it, right?" Sarutobi assessed Naruto's sincerity by giving him a long, hard look. "Are you sure?" Naruto gave a forceful nod. "Yup." Sarutobi sighed and said, "Fine. We'll allow Haku to live in Konoha." "Yes!" Naruto exclaimed with a joyful fist pump. Sarutobi raised a finger to stop him before he could do more. "However, she will remain under surveillance for a month. She will also have to report to me every month for the next 6 months. If she wants to join our forces, she'll have to start from a genin, and will be given a trial period of 3 years, during which she can't apply for promotion. Will you agree to it?" Sarutobi went on to ask Haku the final question. After emerging from behind Masaki, Haku bowed and said, "I'll gladly accept your kindness." Sarutobi nodded. "Good. Kakashi, I'd like to talk to you separately, so you should stay. The rest of you are dismissed." The genin had gone, and Sarutobi looked at Kakashi. "So, tell me, was there anything out of the ordinary that you need to report to me?" Kakashi answered, "As a matter of fact, there was. And I think it'd be better if we were alone for this." After giving the suggestion some thought, Sarutobi nodded slightly. Before leaping out of the window and shutting it behind them, 2 ninja emerged from the shadow. "All right, we are alone now," Sarutobi said. "Tell me what happened." Without holding back, Kakashi explained. Naruto used the Kyuubi's chakra. He was surprised that the Hokage appeared unaffected by the news. Sarutobi questioned, "Did he lose control of it?" Kakashi replied, "Actually, he was in pretty good control. You don't seem too much concerned." Sarutobi smiled and said, "As long as he doesn't lose control, it should be fine, don't you think?" "But what about the chakra poisoning?" exclaimed Kakashi, outraged at the wizened Hokage's seemingly careless behavior at one of his students. Sarutobi retorted, "The chakra doesn't poison Naruto too much, actually." Puzzled, Kakashi asked himself, "What's that supposed to mean?" Sarutobi paused to think about something, then said, Considering Naruto used the chakra in front of you, he most probably wants you to know this in the first place. I see it do no harm to let you know. Especially since his teammates seem to know already." "What are you talking about?" Kakashi was still unable to understand Sarutobi's words. "Since you are a Junin, I suppose I don't have to explain devils to you?" Sarutobi replied. Not understanding, Kakashi said, "No, but what's that got to do with Naruto?" "Through some unfortunate, or maybe fortunate, events, Naruto turned himself into a devil," Sarutobi clarified. Kakashi cried out, "What? But, how?" Sarutobi remarked, "Well, let's just say that he was reincarnated into one. As it is now, even if he were to use a large portion of Kyuubi's chakra, his body will not be poisoned, you know, devil's sturdiness and all." Kakashi muttered, clearly shaken by this information. "Is that so? How long have you known?" Sarutobi said, looking disappointed, "Well, for quite a while, actually. I know I should have told you earlier, but he told me explicitly not to tell anyone, and I really couldn't betray his trust." Kakashi muttered angrily, "I suppose not." Feeling uncomfortable, Sarutobi attempted to shift the subject. Anyway, did anything else happen there? Kakashi, who was not yet over the notion that Naruto turned into a devil, answered, not too much. It's just that Naruto got the bridge named after him. Sarutobi grinned and said, oh really? He's becoming famous already, but why, though? Well, he did kill Gato, even though he had some help, but they didn't know the other girl. Replied Kakashi. That reminds me, did you manage to send in reinforcements? Because that other girl carried a Konoha headband with her. Sarutobi questioned, really? Could you describe her? Kakashi replied, I could, but Naruto should even be able to tell you her name. They seem to be pretty close. Did they now? Mumbled Sarutobi. I guess I'll ask him then, you can go now. When they left the Hokage Tower, Masaki inquired, was it alright for you to accept such conditions? Haku answered, it's fine. Since Sama told me to come here, I'm going to make most of what is on offer. Masaki whispered, I see you're still harping on what Zabuza said. Naruto remarked, that's not really surprising. What's more surprising is that it was Zabuza who sent her along with us. That's true. Haku whispered, a flashback. Naruto questioned, so, what are you going to do now, Zabuza? After departing Wave, Team 7 was now returning to Konoha. Haku and Zabuza, who appeared to be heading in the same direction, had joined them. Zabuza answered, I guess I'm going to go see an old friend. Naruto asked, so you're going to take up her offer, huh? Then he smiled. Naruto sarcastically remarked, I suppose it was inevitable, eh? Zabuza asked, perplexed, what's that supposed to mean? Naruto approached Zabuza's side and started to prod him with his elbow, saying, oh come on. Don't be shy. Tell me, are you gonna get lovey-dovey with? Smack. Ow. Naruto knelt down and held his head, which had a bump on it. Zabuza shook his hand in the air and muttered, shut up, you stupid brat. Naruto muttered, aw. You are no fun. He got to his feet and faced Haku. He said, and, what are you gonna do? Haku confidently answered, I'm going to go with Zabuza. Sama, of course. Zabuza stated, actually, you're not. You'll be going with the brats. Haku was taken aback by this. She started to complain, but Zabuza. Sama. But Zabuza abruptly stopped her. Zabuza sternly said, now listen to me Haku. You've helped me a lot throughout the years, and I am happy for that. But it's about time that you actually went and lived your life. I almost got you killed once already. I don't want that to happen again. Haku became furious and asked, and how does sending me away stop me from dying? For one thing, the brat's much more better than the person I'm going to meet, and I live on the run. My and my companion's life will always be in danger. You'll be better with him. Replied Zabuza. He muttered, and the boy is strong. Shell. Shocked by Zabuza's abrupt behavioral shift, Haku turned to face him. She huffed, okay, then. I'll follow him. If that's what you really want. But don't expect me to listen to that stupid pervert's orders. I don't expect you to. The end of the flashback. I really wasn't expecting him to agree to it this easily. Replied Naruto. I even had prepared a heartwarming story for him so that he would agree. Masaki questioned, and you think that would pierce the demon's heart? Well, it would have been worth a shot, since he seems to actually have a heart. Naruto thought. Hey, Haku cried out angrily. Don't talk about Zabuza. Sama like that. According to Naruto, fine, I won't. Then he muttered, not in front of you, at least. What was that? Haku inquired. Naruto hedged the question, saying, nothing, nothing. Anyway, where's Sasuke? Masaki replied, he left quite a while back, actually. He said something about going home and training. Naruto scratched his head, asking, really? I didn't see him leaving. Masaki sighed, you weren't really paying attention, were you? I guess not. Naruto laughed foolishly. Masaki shook her head in dismay and said, TCH. Anyhow, what are we doing about Haku's lodging? The realization made Naruto jump. Oh, that's right. I'm gonna go search for available apartments. Why don't you show Haku-chan around? Masaki questioned, wouldn't it be easier for her to go with you? Naruto jumped up and said, I also have some stuff to do, and it would be a waste of time on her part. He vanished into the constantly shifting throng of people after saying, so I'll go now. Meet you in front of your place in 2 hours, okay. The voice of a woman said, so you're here, Zabuza. Zabuza answered, it would seem like it. At the moment, Zabuza was in a stone room with only a table and a chair in front of him. A very beautiful woman was seated on the high-backed chair. Her gorgeous black hair was tied up in a bun, and a black dress of equal glamour covered her lovely body. Any man would be smitten by her piercing brown eyes as she gazed at him through a pair of spectacles. Despite his many facets, Momochi Zabuza was not many men. The woman's beauty was not going to captivate him. Zabuza was tired of the thorns, even though she was a rose. And if the person in front of you was Kurokami Madoka, the head of the Konoha Mafia, these thorns might be poisonous. With a kind and considerate tone, Madoka said, "I hope you had a nice trip to Konoha." Zabuza said in a rather casual manner, "Sure was." A vein on Madoka's temple began to pulse as he asked, "But what's with you in that sweet tone?" Madoka complained, "You still don't seem to have any manners, I see." Zabuza teased, his lips quivering, threatening a smile, "Never learned, did I?" Madoka sighed, "I guess traveling with a girl didn't help, huh?" Zabuza smiled by saying, "Guess not." Madoka asked gravely, "So, what makes you suddenly so eager for a reunion?" Zabuza attempted, and failed miserably, to sound disappointed as he asked, "Can't a man just want to meet his old friend?" "Not when that man is you," Madoka told him gravely. Zabuza moaned, "Ah, you're no fun at all. Since you want to know that badly, I hit a snag in my campaign, and came to look for some help." Zabuza nodded vigorously when Madoka said, "Took a lot of effort to admit that, didn't it?" With a sigh, she asked once more, "So, what's this snag of yours?" "Well, you see, that messenger of yours kinda took away my partner," replied Zabuza. Madoka gazed at Zabuza with half-lidded eyes and said, "I thought you let your partner go." Zabuza said, "I did. But only after I realized that I was putting her in harm's way for my own personal goals." Madoka said bluntly, "I don't think your goal is personal." Zabuza dismissed the phony compliment, saying, "Why, thank you. But that's not the point. She had nothing to do with it, and yet she almost died for it. It made me rethink my whole approach." Madoka encouraged him, "And what did you come up with?" "I realized that I have absolutely no information on the person I'm supposed to be fighting." Zabuza went on. "So, here I am, hoping you could give me a little bit more information." "You finally came for information after all these years?" Madoka was, to put it mildly, taken aback. She shook her head at the lengths a man will go out of pride before seeking assistance. Then, getting back to her seriousness, she turned to Zabuza. "All right then. Listen up, and I'm not going to tell you twice, so you'd better remember it." With a smile, Zabuza said, "That's the plan." Masaki said, "So, what shall we start with?" Haku answered, "Anywhere should be fine, I guess." Right now, Haku and Masaki stood in front of the Hokage Tower. While Naruto had just left them there to look for a place for Haku to stay, Sasuke had already departed. They chose to follow Naruto's advice and go on a tour now that they were on their own. Masaki stated, "Then we'll start with the mission counter. It's inside the Hokage Tower, so we're already here." As they entered, Haku thought, "Well, that's a short trip." As Haku entered through the door, she was greeted by a quite empty room in terms of people. The left wall was decorated with a number of paintings, and the right wall was lined with a number of shelves. There was a long table facing the door with chairs that could accommodate 3 ninja, but only one person was seated there at the moment. Masaki cheerfully said, "Yo, Iruka. Sensei. I see that you managed to pick the forever alone shift." The academy teacher said, "Rude as ever, I see. And it's called helping others work shift." Masaki waved her hand and said, "As if you just named that yourself." Iruka shook his head in shock. "You? So, what brings you here? As far as I know, your team is on leave after that mission in Wave." Masaki casually responded, "Just passing by. Brought a friend along to show her the place from which missions are assigned." "Oh really?" Iruka asked, intrigued. He turned to Haku. "You must be the friend, then." Haku rushed forward and then bowed deeply, saying, "Ah, I'm glad to meet you. Please take care of me." "Oh, no, no, no." Frustrated by Haku's civility, Iruka quickly stood up. He bowed back, saying, "The pleasure is all mine." Iruka's lack of poise made Masaki shake her head, but then her face brightened as she suddenly remembered something. She caught Iruka's attention by saying, "Ah, that's right. Iruka. Sensei. You still have one of those maps of Konoha, don't you?" He said, "I do. What do you need it for?" Masaki pointed to the individual in question and said, "It's for Haku Chan here. We don't want a guest to lose their way around Konoha, now do we?" Iruka said, "Of course we don't." He approached the shelves and dug through a stack of scrolls before extracting one. Masaki then deftly caught the scroll with her right hand after he threw it at her. "There you go." After giving Haku the map, Masaki turned back to Iruka. "We'll leave for now. See y'all later." As Masaki escorted Haku from the room, Uruka observed. He pondered whether Masaki would ever stop referring to this as the forever alone shift as he sat down. Then he furrowed his brows, recalling something at once. Haku was meant to be the one they brought back from Wave, right? As he strolled through Konoha's streets, Naruto observed every building he came across, searching for any indication that it was seeking tenants. He was en route to the housing agency, which maintained a list of every home that was for rent at the time. Despite this, he continued to search for any suitable location he might come across. He was still moving slowly when he became aware of an oddity. A rectangular rock appeared to be pursuing him. He made an effort to ignore the rock, but it seemed to accelerate and approach him even more. Even for a ninja village, the sight was rather strange, and several onlookers turned around to observe it. Naruto soon became agitated by the blatantly poorly done attempt to follow him in secret. As soon as the strange rock entered, he turned around after walking straight into an empty alley. He yelled at the rock, "Get out of that box, Konohamaru." At the shout, the rock stopped suddenly and remained motionless for a short while before a voice emerged from it. As expected of my rival, when a tiny explosion took place inside the rock, Naruto instinctively raised one hand. Numerous people coughed heavily after the explosion, which was followed by a lot of smoke and dust. Through the smoke, someone said, "Konoha, cough, Maru. You used, cough, too much, cough, explosives." "No, cough. Way." Konohamaru answered. "You, cough, should have, cough, thrown it, cough, after we, cough, came out of the, cough, box, udon." Another voice said, "It was your idea, cough, to throw it early. You guys." Naruto held his forehead in one hand while shaking his head. "What are you doing?" Konohamaru cried out, "Oh," as the dust settled. Before posing, he remarked, "Almost forgot. I'm Konohamaru." The girl said, "I'm Moegi." The other boy muttered, "Udon." They chanted, "And we are the Konohamaru Corps." Naruto stared at them for a long time, hard to believe what he was seeing. He chose to ignore it because he couldn't truly accept that they had just done that. Naruto then shook his head to get rid of the image before moving on. "What are you doing?" Unfazed that his antics were disregarded, Konohamaru responded, "We're here to play ninja." In reality, he seemed to be unaware that he was being ignored, but let's keep that from him. "You promised us last time, you know." Naruto recalled, "Ah, I did, didn't I?" Just as he was about to agree to them, he caught a glimpse of something out of the corner of his eye. "I would, but I have somewhere to go right now." Konohamaru moaned, "Ah, but you promised us, Naruto, Nichin." Naruto attempted to placate him by saying, "Another time then. You know how busy it can get when you are a real ninja." Konohamaru complained, "Fine, but you better remember your promise." Naruto watched as the three children walked out of the alley and answered, "Ah, I will." Then he spun around and saw an Enbu wearing a mask that covered his face. "Let's get going then. Make yourself at home. Sorry to intrude." After Masaki opened the door for her, Haku entered the apartment. They had reviewed the key spots on the map, such as the weaponsmith and grocer, for a good hour. Masaki had chosen to show Haku every location while noting them on the map. Haku gladly accepted Masaki's suggestion to wait at her place until Naruto arrived after they had finished exploring Konoha, which is Masaki's apartment, where they are right now. "Would you like something to drink?" Masaki asked Haku over her shoulder as she entered the kitchen. To which Haku replied, "Some water, please." Masaki said, "Sure," and proceeded to the sink. After settling into a chair at the dining table, Haku surveyed the apartment. There wasn't much grandeur about this charming little location. The kitchen was directly connected to the dining room, which also served as a living room, with a counter serving as a partition. On the opposite side of the kitchen, a door was open, allowing Haku to see the outline of a bed and deduce that it was the bedroom. Masaki entered the room holding a glass of water. Haku accepted it politely after she gave it to him. She inquired, "How do you like the place?" "Not quite what I expected," was Haku's candid response. Masaki asked, "Oh, what did you expect? You know, how Naruto mentioned that devils didn't have to worry about money?" Haku asked after Masaki nodded. "I was expecting something much more grand because of that." "Oh, so that's why." Masaki laughed his head off. "You know, it's not like I have money problem or anything. But I'd rather keep a low profile, especially when I kill people for a living." Haku nodded in comprehension and said, "Ah, so that's why." Then she turned to Masaki. The girl was quite intelligent and upbeat. In addition, she possessed strength. Haku didn't really understand how she ended up with that perverted boy. Masaki roused Haku from her daze by asking, "Is there something on my face?" Haku shook her head, saying, "Aw no, nothing of the sort. I was just wondering." "About what?" inquired Masaki. Haku questioned, "Why do you put up with Naruto? Isn't it really hard?" Masaki grinned and said, "Oh, about that. While I know that he can be quite unbearable at times, he really does mean good." With plenty of venom in her voice, Haku answered, "He doesn't seem like it." Masaki attempted to comfort her by saying, "Oh, don't worry. You'll like him in no time." Haku angrily said, "No way. There's no way I'd come to like him. It's like Zabuza-sama coming to love a girl." Zabuza sneezed inside Madoka's headquarters, to which Masaki added, "No really. Even I didn't like him at first, you know." Curious, Haku questioned, "Then how come you're friends with him now?" Masaki attempted to avoid discussing her relationship with Naruto by saying, "It's a long story." Determined to hear the tale, Haku declared, "We have time." After a long moment of staring at Haku, Masaki sighed, "Then we'll have to start from the very beginning." Danzo said, "What do we do now, Sarutobi?" Sarutobi answered, "There's not much we can do, is there?" Now, Kaharu and Homura, Sarutobi's advisors, were in his office with Sarutobi and Danzo. The room was empty. Not even the security personnel. Each of the 4 people in attendance had a serious expression on their faces. Homura, who was clearly furious, asked, "You don't expect us to do nothing, do you, Sarutobi?" Kaharu agreed with Homura, saying, "Exactly. If we don't do anything, we'll be sitting ducks as the Uchiha go along with their coup d'etat." "And what do you want me to do, exactly?" the irate Sarutobi shot back. "I've already tried to settle the things by conversing to them through Itachi. That didn't work out, so what else is there to do?" Danzo proposed, "We could try killing the ones supporting the coup." "No, that won't work," Sarutobi answered. "Almost all of them support the coup. Killing them all would just be a bloody massacre, and will only worsen our situation. And we can't lose so many capable shinobi. It would drastically reduce our might." Homura objected, but Sarutobi's glare silenced her, "But we can't just do nothing." Taking his pipe from his desk, Sarutobi stated, "That is the only option we have left. Now if you folks will excuse me, I still have work to do." Sarutobi then stood up, causing the other 3 to follow suit. Before he went to his office window, Sarutobi observed the 3 of them leaving. He took a long drag from his pipe and gazed out at the village. Lit by the fading sun, he sucked out the smoke slowly, enjoying it. "It seems that I've failed miserably in protecting this village, Haminato, Hashirama Sensei, Tobarama Sensei." Homura complained, "What do we do now? That old coot isn't going to do anything at all." "If this keeps up, the Uchiha are going to successfully execute the coup," said Kaharu. The other 2 gave Danzo a perplexed look as he said, "There's no need to worry. It's time for me to speak with Itachi directly." Masaki watched as the corpse of her mother lay in a pool of blood in front of her, and Itachi stood next to it, supporting her father with one hand while holding the kodachi that had impaled him with the other, pulling the kodachi out and allowing the body to crumple at his feet as he gazed at Masaki with icy, emotionless eyes. "I am really sorry," Itachi said, readying his kodachi. "I did not want to do this," he said, disappearing from Masaki's sight. After that, Masaki saw nothing but darkness. Masaki awoke with a start. Her eyes snapped open as she sat up, but the light immediately blinded her, so she had to shield them with her left hand. As her eyes gradually adapted to the light, she discovered that it came from an open window next to the bed. She stood up, quite stiff, and pulled the heavy curtains over the window to block out the sunlight. She then turned to face the room and surveyed its furniture, which was, to be honest, rather sparse. Aside from the bed she was lying on, which was to her right, there was only a desk and a wardrobe to her left. Other than these 3 items, there was nothing in the room. But one thing was certain, this was not her room. To put it mildly, Masaki was perplexed. To start, she couldn't understand how she got from her home to a completely different location, especially since she didn't recognize it. As she was about to dash out of the room, she noticed a picture frame lying face down on the table, something she had missed earlier. Curious, she turned it over and saw a picture of an elderly man ruffling a child's hair, which Masaki instantly recognized as the 3rd Hokage. The young boy, on the other hand, was quite different. He wore a white shirt and blue shorts, and had spiky blonde hair and blue eyes, but the strangest thing about him were the whisker marks on his cheeks, which were crinkled by his enormous smile. Masaki had never seen the boy before and did not recognize him. She was thinking about the boy's identity when she heard a noise that distracted her. She turned around and discovered that the sound was coming from outside the room, and she walked slowly to the door, which she saw to be open, with a glimmer of light coming through the thin crack from the edge of the door. She opened the door and entered a slightly larger room. Masaki glanced around the room and saw that it had two uses. A dining table and a few chairs in the upper left corner, a living room with a few more chairs and a low table to her right, and an open door and a closed door to her left. She approached the door slowly, craning her neck as she went, trying to catch a glimpse of the source of the noise, but she unintentionally knocked over a chair, which stopped the sound, and a spiky blonde head briefly emerged from the door. She doesn't recognize him at first, but the whisker marks on his cheeks quickly lead her to believe he is the boy from the photo. "Oh, you're awake," the boy said. Something clicked in Masaki's mind the instant he spoke. Isn't that the boy I met yesterday?" Recalling her encounter with him the previous day, she inquired. He grinned and extended his hands for a handshake, saying, "Technically, it was the day before yesterday. But, that's me. Uzumaki Naruto, at your service." "Oh, you're mistaken." Before Naruto could respond, Masaki scoffed, saying, "So this must be your house, then. I remember it clearly, it was yesterday that you attempted to be a hero and save me from ruffians, when it was clear as day that I could handle myself just fine. Why have I come here?" Startled by what Masaki said, Naruto shut his partially open mouth. "You don't remember?" With some curiosity, he inquired. "Do you recall exactly what?" Unaware of what Naruto was discussing, Masaki inquired. "I guess it does happen sometimes," Naruto said, placing one hand across his chest and lifting the other to his chin. "I suppose it was shocking for the first time," he muttered to himself. "What have I forgotten?" Masaki asked, suddenly fearing the worst. She grabbed Naruto by the collar and shook him violently. "What did you do to me?" Naruto raised his hands defensively and said, "I didn't do anything to you." Unbelieving him, Masaki scoffed. "So what happened last night?" Naruto retorted, "Itachi massacred your entire clan." When Masaki remembered the dream she had just had, she looked at him incredulously and realized, no way. "Danzo. What did you instruct Itachi to do?" a furious Sarutobi asked. "What are you discussing?" In response, Danzo inquired. Sarutobi snarled, "You know exactly what I'm talking about, don't act ignorant." "You misunderstand, Sarutobi," Danzo said casually. "I didn't give him any instructions. He chose one on his own after I simply explained our options to him." That last night wasn't a dream, are you telling me?" Masaki questioned with astonishment. Naruto nodded and said, "Yes. And that in a single night, Itachi killed my whole clan." Still not believing it, she asked. In response, Naruto said, "And even though I was dead, you managed to find me and bring me back to life?" With skepticism, she inquired. "Yup." Naruto gave a forceful nod of his head. She sat on a chair and muttered, "I don't believe it." Naruto said empathetically, "Well, it can be quite hard to come to terms with your family's death." "No, you don't understand." Masaki shook her head. "What I don't believe is that you just found me and then somehow resurrected me," she complained, taking Naruto by surprise. "Itachi killing my family was something that's pretty believable, especially since they didn't see eye to eye." After a few moments of hesitation, Naruto finally managed to say, "I might have been searching for you." Uncertain, he muttered. "What makes that a query?" Masaki raised one eyebrow and asked. "No, I mean, I was looking for you especially, since you were the only Uchiha I knew." Naruto gasped. "I mean, you are the only Uchiha I know, you know what I mean." He sighed. "I understand that you were searching for me," Masaki said, "but how did you revive me?" Naruto sat on a chair across from her and chuckled uneasily. "Well, that is a very good question. Do you know about devils?" "You mean the ones that show up in fairy tales for kids?" With skepticism, Masaki inquired. Before glancing at Masaki's perplexed expression as he sighed, Naruto remarked, "You could say that, but they are not the same. I guess showing you would be better, huh?" Masaki stared at him, puzzled by what he had said, and he got back up and turned around, and then, to her surprise, two bat-like wings spread out from behind him. But how?" sputtered Masaki. With his wings folded back, Naruto turned to face Masaki and said, "It was similar to you situation. Like me. So you passed away and were brought back to life as a devil?" Naruto nodded in response to Masaki's question. "So basically, because I am a devil, I had the power to bring back people from the dead," Naruto clarified. "But there's a catch. The people that I bring back turn into devils." "What?" Perched atop a tree, two men gazed at Konoha. "So, I hear that Sasuke was not the only one to survive the massacre," muttered one of the two, an old man wearing a white coat. The other, wearing an orange spiral mask with only one eyehole, said, "There is a lot of here-telling going on lately. And it's true, albeit she didn't survive naturally." "Is it what I think it is?" asked the old man, because if it is, I would really like to experiment on her. Do what you will with her, answered the masked man. I have no use of her. With pleasure. So, in order to revive me, you transformed me into a devil? To be certain, Masaki inquired. Naruto said, yes, and you only managed to save me, Uchiha? Masaki pondered. Well, it seems that Sasuke wasn't killed, but yes, you're the only one I saved, replied Naruto. But why me? Why not a different Uchiha? Masaki asked. With a serious expression, Naruto answered, let me be honest with you. I'm not going to say that I saved you for some high and mighty reason, since I didn't. I saved you on a whim and for selfish reasons. I could care less if the rest of the Uchiha rot in hell. Why you? Masaki started to say in a rather irate tone, but Naruto interrupted with a finger raise. Masaki, I am the devil. We devils are driven by greed and desire. We consume what people refer to as sins. And even if I can only save a certain number of people, I will always save those who will enable me to achieve my objectives. Particularly since I can only use those individuals as my servants, Naruto remarked. What is this thing about servants? Masaki said, wait, hang on a minute. Ah, I forgot to explain. Naruto replied. We devils can only command those that we use an evil piece on, and it's the same thing that also allows us to revive people. Masaki noted, so basically you're just making your own army. Naruto grinned and said, well, you could say that. Masaki questioned, so, what's in it for people like me? Do I have no free will at all? Naruto's smile widened as he clarified, oh, that's not the case at all. You're also a devil, after all. Then that means, speculated Masaki. Naruto replied, you will eventually get the same perks. Finally, Masaki inquired, you're going to have to work your way up to where I am now. Replied Naruto. You are currently a low-class devil, you make your way to high-class devil, and then you get your evil pieces. So basically I have to help you get your goal in order to get mine, Masaki responded. Naruto nodded, that's the gist of it. Exasperated, Masaki remarked, but that could take ages, depending on your goal. Naruto answered, and ages we have. What is the intended meaning of that? Perplexed, Masaki inquired. You'll be living a long, long time, Naruto replied. It means exactly what it means. For at least a few thousand years. What? Okay, Danzo. It appears that you have succeeded in massacring the Uchiha, a woman remarked. A man can try. Danzo said with a small smile, I wonder what brings the great Madoka to my office. Madoka smiled as she replied, I'm here to give you a little message. And you were unable to use a messenger to send it? Danzo inquired. Madoka responded, stressing the word, personally, I wanted to tell this to you personally. Oh. What could be the message? Danzo inquired, a little irritated. Give the girl and the boy some space. With a note of animosity in her voice, Madoka declared, they are my prey. After giving it some thought, Danzo nodded in agreement, which made Madoka smile once more. Good, she said, before vanishing into a luminous magic circle. Danzo shook his head as he observed the spot where Madoka vanished, thinking to himself, one day I will triumph over you devils, mark my words. I'm sorry for them, but I haven't seen any of Madoka's victims survive to tell the story. So, let me get this straight, Masaki said, I have to raise my rank in the devil world in order to achieve whatever objective I have. Naruto said, well, more or less. More or less, what do you mean? Is it more or is it less? Masaki inquired, and Naruto shrugged in response. Depends on your goal, to be fair. Replied Naruto. If it's an easy goal like becoming a king, it's easily manageable. Masaki nodded her head in comprehension and said, right. Then she noticed a difference and said, wait a minute. How on earth is becoming a king such a simple objective? In contrast to some of the other things that people choose as goals, Naruto said, well, all you need to do is a little manipulation and a couple of murders. For example, there are so many different types of jutsu that it would take a very long time to learn them all. All right, Masaki muttered, how about exacting revenge on a particular man? Don't you think that depends on the man? Nevertheless, given your circumstances, I'll tell you one thing. Naruto smiled in response. It won't be difficult to kill the man you're considering, but are you certain that he is the one you must kill? What's that supposed to mean? Masaki asked in shock. You're the one who told me about him. Masaki narrowed her eyes as Naruto asked, and you believe me? Oh, you really believed me, didn't you? Masaki said, and what if I did? Masaki looked at Naruto questioningly as he said, well, you'd then be both right and wrong. You'd be right because Itachi did kill them, but that's not all there is to it. Huh? asked a perplexed Masaki. In the netherworld, somewhere. Ajuka Beelzebub remarked, I hear the brat managed to get his first servant. Perched atop a rather large tree root that protruded from the ground, he gazed upon a rather sizable clearing amidst an even larger forest. Another man was doing one-handed vertical push-ups in the clearing. His slender figure was concealed by rather form-fitting clothing, which made his ripped yet slender muscles stand out. As he heard Ajuka speak, he used his hand to push himself off the ground and land securely on his feet. Ajuka grabbed a towel from a bag close by and extended it to him. He accepted Ajuka's offered towel and wiped the beady perspiration from his face, saying, Yes, I've heard. Ajuka asked with a playful smile, Didn't expect it to happen so quickly, did you? The other man said, To be honest, I'm still not sure that the servant will last. Curious, what do you mean? Ajuka asked. Considering what I saw, he won't be able to control her, he replied. Which means we'll have to hunt down a stray devil. Ajuka said, Don't be so sure about it. Why shouldn't I be? Replied the individual. The brat's not smart, isn't good at handling situations, and is definitely incapable of properly conversing with humans. Ajuka glared at him and asked, And that doesn't remind you of a certain someone? This was the only thing the man complained about. The following day, at an abandoned training ground in Konoha, Masaki's thoughts were racing. To be honest, nobody would blame her for being perplexed. She had, after all, just been killed in the massacre of her family and then revived as a devil. Anybody's mind would be confused by that. In addition to being her master, for want of a better term, she was now following a blonde boy who claimed to be the devil who had revived her. Furthermore, despite the fact that Itachi was obviously the one who killed her family, she did not believe that he was the cause of their deaths. There is no way that her day could get any stranger. Naruto cleared his throat, startling her out of her reverie. When Masaki looked up, she saw that she was in the center of a clearing surrounded by the well-known tree line of Konoha. Anticipating what he would say, she gazed at Naruto. Masaki could only nod when Naruto asked, Remember how I told you about pieces that allow me to bring people back to life? These pieces are designed after the pieces used in chess. Each of these pieces have their own special powers, and depending on the powers of the person being revived, only certain pieces can be used, since each piece has a valuation system. The pawn, for example, is the weakest of pieces, valued as only one. But don't let this fool you. Pawn pieces can be used together to revive the same person, increasing their strength. Pawns also have the capability to promote themselves to a stronger unit in enemy territory, making them one of the most versatile pieces. By now, Masaki was starting to show interest. Her quest to discover what the hell happened the previous evening would undoubtedly be aided by possessing special abilities. Next comes the knight. These pieces are worth 3 pawns, and their strength is extreme speed and agility. Knights are known for their extremely fast attacks, but they tend to be very fragile in terms of defense. If they lose their legs, they become completely useless. This caught Masaki's eye. It is obvious that speed is a huge advantage, but poor defense may be an issue. There's also the bishop, who are also worth 3 pawns. Their main strength is in their magical capabilities, casting magic much more efficiently than most of the other pieces. Although if they use too much power, they'll have to wait a long while to regenerate their energy. Think of them as jutsu spamming ninja who could very well burn their chakra supply very quickly with large-scale jutsu. Of course, you'd still have greater reserves than a regular ninja. Masaki thought this was pretty cool. The distinction between bishops and ninja was minimal. However, this conclusion somehow made her feel a little offended. Then there's the rook. Worth 5 pawns, these guys tend to be tanks, capable of absorbing plenty of physical damage, along with the ability to dish out just as much pain. Like tanks however, they tend to be slow, making them very easy targets for fast enemies. Therefore, rooks are physical behemoths. It was helpful to know that. It's safe to say that Masaki would never doubt the number of surprises that a single day could bring. And that is exactly what you are, Masaki. A queen. Finally, there's the queen. Worth 9 pawns, they are the strongest and most balanced of all the evil pieces, with the physical strength and defense from rooks, the magical proficiency from the bishop, and the speed from the knight. Madoka was seated in her rather plainly furnished office. An elderly man in a white lab coat sat across from her table. Madoka nearly declined the man's offer because of his incredibly annoying smile. The word was almost. When someone obviously stronger than you asks for a favor, you don't say no. The fact that it would serve as a test for the new devil who had appeared right in the middle of her domain was also helpful. And they wouldn't be worth her time if they couldn't even get past this challenge. Within the day, you'll reach your goal. So, what will we do at this point? Still processing the idea that she was purportedly reincarnated with the strongest piece conceivable, Masaki asked hesitantly. With a strange sparkle in his eyes, Naruto declared, "The sooner we begin, the better. We will teach you how to use your new abilities appropriately." Even though Masaki didn't like the smirk Naruto was giving him, which appeared to be the smirk Naruto had right before pulling a practical joke on someone, she decided to take a chance and ask the question that had been on the back of her mind. What kind of training? Naruto's smirk turned into a toothy grin as he said, "The kind where I get to beat you up." Before Masaki could say anything more, the air in her lungs was violently expelled as she was struck squarely in the solar plexus. Nearly instantly, a left uppercut lifted her off her feet and sent her flying. Before she even reached the top of her climb, Naruto appeared directly above her, his wings fully unfolded. Moments later, Masaki was hit by a twisting heel kick that sent her hurtling toward the ground. Just as she was about to hit the ground, Naruto appeared right beside her, puncturing her in the stomach and sending her crashing into a tree. A long day indeed, Masaki moaned as she forced herself out of the small crater made in the tree trunk, and Naruto declared, cracking his neck muscles, "We are going to have a long day today." An hour later, Masaki found herself on the ground, spread eagle, panting heavily from the rather taxing exercise. She didn't want to call it a beating because that would hurt her pride. She was put through. She spent the first 30 minutes as a human ball, being kicked and punched around the entire training ground. As time went on, her reactions improved until she was able to dodge a random blow. This continued for 15 more minutes. The final 15 minutes were when she really shone. Dodged 5 blows in a row before Naruto stopped the training, which was extremely frustrating. She pushed herself off the ground into a sitting position and then turned to face Naruto, who was towering over her and signaling that the break was over. Naruto also remarked, "Your taijutsu is pretty good, you know." Masaki scoffed. She complained, "Then how come I didn't hit you?" "A new devil needs some time to get used to their new body after all," Naruto said, letting a tiny smile appear on his lips. "You weren't meant to." Masaki laughed sarcastically at this. "So, what next?" Naruto said, "Next is magic training." Masaki became slightly excited, "But before we go into the super cool techniques, you first need to learn how to draw your Maryuku. And developing a magic bullet is the most effective way to accomplish this." Before a tiny ball of magic formed in his hands, Naruto raised his hand in the direction of one of the trees. "This is actually the simplest of techniques," he said. "Before gathering your aura into a ball, you must first feel it surrounding you. In essence, your aura is a sheet of chakra that envelops you. The rest is simple once you can form the ball." He said, "All you have to do is will it towards a target, and bam." He then threw the ball at an unwary tree, which was struck by the bullet with some force and exploded upon impact, causing the tree to topple over after being split in two. "You'll have to finish this on your own," Naruto said, turning to Masaki. "I have to go see the Hokage. I have a few things to clarify." Masaki nodded and watched Naruto walk out of the clearing before focusing on gathering her aura into her hand, whatever that meant. All right. As he sat in his office, having just concluded a meeting with the village council, Sarutobi hoped that they would finally begin to settle down after the initial panic had set in when the news of the Uchiha massacre broke. The day after the event was a day of pure chaos, second only to the Kyuubi attack. As his thoughts turned to the problems that awaited him, he heard a soft knocking and looked up to see one Uzumaki Naruto leaping into the room through the window. "Hey, senior citizen. How are things in this area?" Naruto seated himself in a chair facing the table and asked. The Sandaime Hokage said deadpan, just like it would be after the massacre of a prominent clan in the village. "Can't you use the door like a normal person?" Naruto gave a cheeky smile and snorted, "Now where's the fun in that? Plus I'm not exactly normal, so the point is moot regardless." For example, Sarutobi had no way to refute his claim that he was a devil who worked as a ninja during the day. Instead, he thought to himself, "Smartass," which is the most common thought that comes to mind when Naruto speaks. "I hope you aren't here just to shove your uniqueness in my face, and actually have something to talk about." As he became serious, Naruto said, "Oh, I do, actually. I want to talk about Itachi going cuckoo and murdering his entire clan save his little brother." When Naruto was serious, he didn't like to mince words, so the seasoned Hokage could only wince at how direct he had been. "So, what do you want to know about?" he asked. Naruto's words caused Sarutobi's features to harden almost instantly. "I need to know why you let Danzo manipulate Itachi like that. How do you know about that?" he inquired. With a dismissive tone, Naruto responded, "I have my sources." It was obvious that he would not elaborate further. "You haven't answered my question yet." The elderly Hokage let out a sigh of resignation and said, "It's not like I told Danzo to do this. after Sarutobi gave Naruto a long, hard look that was met with equal tenacity. But it was still my fault that he managed to get to Itachi like he did. The Sandaime gave a guilty smile. Danzo merely used the blind eye that I turned towards him to his advantage. And frankly, I cannot do anything to him directly without completely curtailing the village's strength. I am familiar with both his personal army and his tactics. But in addition to all of his dubious actions, he also contributes to the village in a number of positive ways, and I can't let that go. I accept complete responsibility for my deeds, and I will carry this weight until the end of my days. When Naruto looked up, he was surprised to see a smile on his lips and a ghostly expression of understanding lingering in his eyes as he turned his face downward, his hair covering his eyes and obstructing Sarutobi's view. Meh. I don't fully comprehend politics or how you deal with them. To be honest, I don't understand why I ever aspired to be the Hokage now that I know better. For someone like me, it seems too complicated. That was unusual because Naruto rarely questions his own objectives. I have a new goal now, Naruto said, his lips spreading wide in his characteristic foxy grin beneath Sarutobi's probing gaze. He stood up from his chair and thrust his hand forward in a victory gesture, saying, I am going to be the rating games champion and prove to the world that I am the best devil/ninja there is. Sarutobi thought, and he's back again. Regardless of how much Naruto had changed since his apparent death and subsequent rebirth, he could only be seen as a lovable idiot, and he hoped that his carefree attitude would never fade. Naruto appeared to remember something as he approached the window and prepared to jump out. Oh, that's right. I neglected to inform you. I am now a peer of Misaki Uchiha. She was brought back to life to serve me, and anyone who disturbs her will have to deal with me. As Naruto placed his feet on the window ledge, Sarutobi thought to himself, so he had finally gotten his first member of his peerage. An Uchiha would certainly be a great devil, especially with all the illusions that they are capable of. Suddenly, he realized, did he just say servant? With a few thuds, 2 hidden Anbu fell from their perches into a similar pool of blood, and Naruto said, I wonder if I can get her to recreate some scenes from Icha Icha S&M Dungeon. Naruto then leapt out of the room as Sarutobi fell face first into the pool of blood that formed on the table as he bled profusely through his nose. As she attempted to make the magic bullet, Misaki's face furrowed in concentration. She was holding a tiny ball of energy that was gradually growing larger, and just as she thought she was making progress with the pointless exercise, the ball broke apart on its own, much to her dismay. Oh, hurry up! That must be the umpteenth time that it failed, complained Misaki, not pleased that she was failing at something that seemed to be a devil's staple. Where was Naruto anyway? She asked herself, shaking her head to clear her head before continuing her efforts, attempting to ignore the haze that was forming around her. Hell, she was even getting positively exhausted, and if she trained any harder, she would probably pass out. Wait. What haze? Misaki stopped her training instantly, only to find herself in the middle of a ton of smoke. A few seconds in, she could already feel herself losing consciousness, thinking, the smoke must be infused with sleeping gas. Panic set in, and as she fell to the ground, she caught a glimpse of a man's silhouette standing above her. Her final thought was to call someone. Naruto. Madoka dropped the bundle she was carrying to the ground and said, here you go. She watched with mild annoyance as the elderly man approached the bundle, took a portion off to inspect its contents, then got up, turned to Madoka, and sneered. He nodded to one of the lackeys standing behind him and said, it seems that you've done your part of the deal. The man approached Madoka and gave her a bag, which she didn't even bother to look inside, saying, that means you now can have a favor from him. With a smug smile, Madoka said, I look forward to it. As Misaki slowly regained consciousness, she discovered that her limbs were completely immobilized, clasped onto a slanted observation table. The only movement she was able to control was her head, which she could only move slightly. Looking around her, she realized that she was in a building with only one room, possibly a warehouse, based on the size of the room, the slanted roof's placement, the wooden pillars and beams supporting the roof, and the numerous large sacks and barrels piled to the roof to her right, which further suggested that the building was a warehouse. Misaki's attention was drawn to her left, on the edge of her field of vision. By the sound of glass hitting glass, and she forced herself to push off the table as far as her restraints would allow, where she saw an elderly man, perhaps in his 50s, tinkering with a couple of test tubes, his gray hair streaked with black and white, long enough to fall unkemptly onto the collar of his coat, and wearing a white lab coat that was discolored beyond belief from the prolonged exposure to who knows how many chemicals. As Misaki tried to get a better look at him, the man turned around, unintentionally allowing her to see him clearly, set the test tube he was holding on the workbench next to him, and walked over to her. As he stood next to Misaki, staring down at her, the man said in a raspy voice, "Ah, it seems that you are awake." Misaki pulled at the bindings holding her to the table, which made her captor click his tongue. "Don't even try it," he said. These restraints effectively seal the devil's powers because they are made of materials with a light attribute. You have no possibility of shattering them. "Who are you?" Misaki asked, as she continued to tug away at her restraints. Just because the person who imprisoned her said something she wasn't going to believe him straight out. "And why have you imprisoned me?" "You're correct. My manners are missing. I'm Kiyoshi Sugawara, a scientist and researcher extraordinaire, at your service," the man said, feigning a bow as he introduced himself. "And isn't the answer to your second question clear? You are my little devil's test subject." "You won't get away with this," Misaki declared, her eyes widening in shock at Kiyoshi's words as she tugged at her bindings with renewed vigor. The insane scientist laughs uncontrollably at Misaki's remarks. "And who exactly is going to make me pay, huh? There is nothing you can do because you are confined to that table. Your master probably doesn't give a damn about your welfare and was foolish enough to abandon you in a chaotic situation. The only people left are humans, who, to be honest, even if they could, would never assist a devil like you." Misaki flinched as Kiyoshi sneered. They couldn't even stop the massacre of fellow humans like the Uchiha. It was true that she couldn't really get out of her restraints, and no one would come after someone who was supposedly dead. Misaki stopped struggling, Kiyoshi's words hitting home. She didn't trust the blonde devil, who had accused himself of using Misaki for his own ends, and she didn't really know him at all. If Naruto abandoned her, there was nothing that could save her from this predicament. "That's right. Believe that there is no hope for you in this situation. The seed of doubt has been planted in her mind, and it will grow into discord and chaos soon enough. And I will be there to take advantage of it," Kiyoshi said, grinning slightly as he watched Misaki quiet down. "Dude." As he dashed across the clearing, looking everywhere for Misaki, Naruto swore, "Where the fuck did she disappear to?" From inside him, the Kyuubi said, "Brat, I can sense some strong sleeping gas residue in the vicinity. Which idiot thought it would be amusing to take my servant hostage?" As the Kyuubi's chakra started to seep into his body, Naruto's face turned more feral, his eyes turned red, his nails grew longer, and he unfurled his wings and flew straight up in a single, fluid motion. "How about we locate this piece of shit?" As Naruto raised his hand in front of him, a magic circle with an arrow materialized beneath him, spinning in all directions before stopping and pointing in a particular direction. "Found you." A guard said, "Make sure no one gets in." "Yes, indeed." "Yes," the other guard yawned and said, "It's not like anyone's going to come to this abandoned warehouse in the middle of nowhere at such an odd hour." As their leader yelled, "It's the boss's orders, so shut up and do your work." "Everything is fine." The guard complained, "Shut your yapping, would ya?" He rose from his chair and started to patrol the front gate, his eyes straying, but he stopped abruptly after a few passes. "What is that?" Pointing to the north sky, he asked. "Is that a bird?" As a black dot gradually began to grow and take shape, the other guard remarked. Their superior screamed, "No, you blithering idiots. That's not a bird, you buffoons, that's a..." He began. But the unidentified flying object struck him with a huge bang, and he never finished. Before the other two guards could even awaken from their daze, Naruto threw double haymakers at them, sending them crashing into their leader with enough force to blow the door open. The commotion caused the remaining guards to flee to the front door, where they were nearly instantly confronted by a feral Naruto growling and staring at them with blood-red eyes. The guards raised their weapons in anticipation of the impending attack, but they were unable to see it because the blonde devil blurred out of sight and their eyes could not keep up with his superhuman speed. When Naruto eventually reappeared, he was already behind the mercenaries, who all fell to the ground simultaneously after being knocked unconscious. Could it be? Misaki's eyes widened at the sound of a loud crash from outside, followed instantly by the mercenaries' cries as they all charged towards the front door. TCH. When Kiyoshi noticed a glimmer of hope in Misaki's eyes, he clicked his tongue and grinned. "That just makes my job that much sweeter," he thought to himself. "I will break this hope of yours and show you true despair." As Naruto stalked through the now open doorway, a strange red aura emanating from him, he glanced once at the restrained Misaki before turning to face Kiyoshi, who sidestepped it nonchalantly as the room's door broke clean out of its hinges and came flying towards him. "Is it you who had the audacity to abduct my servant?" he growled in a deep voice, one which caused your hair to stand on end. Kiyoshi merely smiled, not to be put off by a clearly angry Naruto. "And so what if I am?" No more words were exchanged as Naruto blasted off, leaving a deep crater where he had kicked off, but before he could reach Kiyoshi, he collided with an invisible barrier in midair, causing the entire warehouse to tremble. Naruto was flung back into the wall as most of his momentum was returned to him, and he pushed himself out of the crater before launching himself at the barrier, with the same outcome. After shifting from his table to stand between Naruto and Masaki, Kyoshi formed a single-handed seal that transformed the invisible barrier into the now visible transparent blue barrier, saying, "It's a devil-repelling barrier. Really useful, don't you think?" This was not going his way at all, Naruto thought to himself as he stood up once more. He took a kunai from his pouch, which was strapped to his knee, and threw it at the insane scientist. To his surprise, which he managed to conceal quite well, the kunai actually passed right through the barrier, but it didn't hit Kyoshi because he just tipped his head to the side, allowing it to fly past. The barrier stopped him directly, but it did not stop ranged projectiles, so he could deal with that. Naruto quickly formed a series of hand seals, collected a lot of chakra in his lungs, and then a ball of compressed air shot out of his mouth. Fuden. Renkuden. The air bullet surprised Naruto by drilling right into the barrier before exploding without causing any significant damage. With a raised eyebrow from Naruto, Kyoshi said, "Yeah, that isn't going to work. Chakra has its roots deep into the world of supernatural and is inherently similar to the magic that devils use. This implies that they are also susceptible to being blocked. Actually, it's a pretty cool feature. It cannot be broken from the outside." If Kyoshi was right, there wasn't much Naruto could do about it. However, he wasn't known for being unpredictable, so he pulled out several shuriken from his pouch and started peppering the old man, who, for his age and line of work, dodged the projectiles quite well. That is, until he noticed the glint coming from ninja wires attached to the shuriken. Kyoshi's eyes widened in horror as a smile appeared on Naruto's lips, causing the shuriken swerved sharply in the air and wrapped the unfortunate scientist in ninja wire. Kyoshi turned around after Naruto said, "You know, you could have helped." Inquiring as to how Masaki had managed to escape, he saw that the first kunai Naruto had thrown, the one he had avoided, was in her hand, with a stab mark directly next to where her hand should have been. The frontal attack itself was merely a diversion. As Masaki left the one-way barrier, Naruto pulled on his wires and pulled Kyoshi out as well. He approached the restrained scientist, who was now clearly terrified of what would happen next, and said, "You didn't need it. What to do with you? Did Naruto grant permission?" Masaki, not pleased that Kyoshi had essentially treated her like a test subject, said, "Maybe you should just kill him." At Masaki's suggestion, Kyoshi whimpered. He may have worked for intimidating people, but nothing was more frightening than a woman who was rightfully angry. There was nothing like a woman's scorn, in fact. "I can give you information," he squeaked out, doing his best to prolong his survival. With a playful twinkle in his eyes, Naruto said, "In that case." Kyoshi was even more alarmed. "You may have some use alive after all."
So that's it for today. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Don't forget to like, share and subscribe to the channel for more awesome stories like this. Thank you. See you all in my next video.